Welcome back, YouTubers. So today will be a video on the Ridgeline. I have not made any content lately for the Ridgeline or other cars on the channel. It was an opportunity for me to upgrade my speakers. And as you can see here, I already did one side. I got the Polk Audio DB6501, not the slim model, and it fits fine. I'll be putting the coaxial in the back rear doors. Now these were for my first car, which were amped, but my Ridgeline I will not be amping. Or amping the speakers at the doors. For the front doors at least, you cannot feed the wire through the plastic tube that goes from the frame to the door. I think my old Accord I could, my old 09 Accord. For this one, I wasn't able to. So with that being said, what happened with this tweeter was that I ended up doing it at the sale right there. You can see I drilled, instead of feeding the wire back into the car and putting into the factory location for the tweeter, I ended up just drilling a hole there and mounting it at the doors. And it actually sounds a lot more clearer than the factory location. So I'm hoping to do a time lapse to show you guys on the passenger side how I did it. And I guess to inform you guys, just because I want to make more content for the Ridgeline. But for this car, I did have a very old, I think not very old, but an old video of the Pioneer install a couple years back, which is still running fine. But let's get going. I'm gonna do this door. So here's the OEM speakers. They're, what can you say? They're just OEM, nothing fancy. But the trick to open these speakers is a clip down here. You gotta push down and then drop it. There you go. Lift out, and then there's your harness. There it is. As you know, with most OEM speakers, you get those tiny magnets. Next, we will be adding a harness to this. You know, back in the day, I would just tap it, but now I'm just gonna buy a harness and tap it and plug it in and just call it a day. Just, I don't know, just getting lazy, I guess. The harness itself costs around, well, depending on where you shop, it ranges from $3 to $5 for a pair. I got 2 bags, which is 4 altogether. So that's that. Plug your harness in. Well, first we gotta do the tweeter, run the wire down, and then mount. Well, I mount the crossover inside the door panel. There isn't a lot of flat surface, so I use a 20-pound 3M double-sided tape. Put it in the back there, and should be fine. I think my previous car I did the same thing. I mounted back there. Make sure you do all your adjustments before you put everything back together. In my case, I just bumped up to 3 decibel, and it was fine. So that's that. Drilling the door seal. Like I said, these are pretty much easy to replace if you don't want that tweeter right there. You want to go back to OEM or not. So I figure this is a lot easier to do than spending 2 hours wiring it up to the factory location. And then going through that right there is not possible without unclipping the harness at the door and then let it hang and then wiring into the car. I feel a little iffy about that, so I'm not going to do that. But yeah, this is easier. Pretty much an hour and a half per door. But now that I've figured it out, probably took me 45 minutes to do this door, put everything back together, and keep it moving. So pretty much right now what's going on is at the crossover wire and the main input wired as well. Then the woofer will go to the middle 2 terminals, and then I'm going to just double-sided tape it behind the panel right here. But first, I have to install the bracket. Then that right there is just some foam I had laying around. I'm just gonna basically cut that out and put it and sandwich it between the panel and the bracket, so as limit any kind of vibration towards that can caused by the speaker. So I'm just trying to minimize any rattle or buzzing noise, just because from experience that from the past, I've always had, like, once you take a door off, like once you take off a factory door and put it back on, there's always something going wrong. There's always a buzz, something creaking, something buzzing. So I'm just trying to minimize that. Whatever I did in the past, clips could be worn out. Something went wrong, and the door never shut like it used to. So like a solid thud. A high volume, the door started like buzzing here and there. So definitely a good idea to put some kind of foam or padding between the panel, the bracket, and the bracket to the speaker, so there's no transfer of vibration throughout the door. So I mean, you only do so much with this. I'm not going to try to be too anal. So but make sure your wiring is nice and short, by the way. So once I get everything wired in, I'm just gonna duct tape or electrical tape everything, so it's nice and tidy. That way there's no chance of it hitting against the door over a speed bump or whatever. You hear every little thing. Just but yeah, let me install the bracket real quick, which is this one right here. This one costs about, I think, $9 for a pair. If you buy it through crushfield.com, not sponsored by the way, if you buy their speakers through them, they'll give you hardware and I think wire for free. Unfortunately, I didn't buy my speaker through them, so, and this one's broken. Nice. So yeah, so I had to buy this separately, and it ended up being cheaper for me buying it through Sonic Electronic, given that this is an older model speaker, but it matches with my previous coaxials, so I didn't mind it. But they do have the new version of these out, 6502, but I just wanted to match my old coaxial, so it saved me like $40, I think, $40 or $50 buying the older model. So there's that. So, but yeah, let me mount this on and then put the woofer on and put the door back in. So this is the finished product. We have the foam right there, bracket, and speaker. Speaker has the foam as well. Everything is mounted. The crossover is mounted right here. On the driver's side, it's actually mounted on this corner right here, which is kind of suck. But down here, I guess it works as well. But yeah. So that's the result right there. Looks pretty good. That's tied down. You just gotta push that in real quick, and then you're done. So put this door back together, and we're gonna do an audio test and see how it sounds. Okay, so back at it. Today we'll be doing the rear doors. It took me a couple hours just to do the front, and I ran out of time. So, as I mentioned before, we'll be using a pair of older Polk I had on my previous mod car about 8 years ago. They're not. These were amp prior, so hopefully, well, they're broken in. I shouldn't be worrying about too much as far as, like, I don't know. These are not slim mounts. So it's pretty good. Now the newer ones, the woofer itself is gold. Of course, you can see this is the older model. It's silver, platinum gray, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, I forget how nice these look. I know while these were amped, one of them were bad, but hopefully I can get away with it with just the aftermarket radio powering these, so they're not being overdriven. So right here, right now, I'm gonna show you guys if you guys haven't seen it already. This harness you can get for any Acura and Honda from the year, I think, 91 and up, I believe. But the part number is 72-7800 from Turbo Wire. So, or you can get from MetroOnline.com. It wasn't too bad pricing. So, just connect. And I like to seal it up with the electrical tape. Don't want no water getting in there. That's one. You just tuck it back there anywhere you want. Now there's already connectors there, so you're all set in that aspect. Now for the bracket. The bracket is, again, I got it from Sonic as well. SAHR6 from 06 and 14, but it says up, so I'm assuming the 17, 18 might fit as well. I'm assuming, so don't quote me on that, but I know for sure from the first generation, 06 to 14, this will fit. This bracket looks almost identical to the one on the Honda Accord and the Acura TXX. So I'm assuming most Hondas it will fit, I'm assuming. So, but yeah, if you're, desperate for a mounting bracket, I would recommend trying these. They're not too expensive. Okay, so it's been about 2 weeks since I had my last recording of this sound system upgrade. Originally, I just want to upgrade these side door panels and the rear door speakers. And one thing led to another. Sound good, but the low wasn't still there. And here we are today installing an amplifier for a subwoofer. So you're just never too happy with the sound coming off of like, I don't know. It's I didn't expect to go this far with this project, but I wasn't too happy with my 3 or 4 hour road trip I had last week out of town. The highs and mid sounds awesome with these new upgrade, but then those are lacking the lows. So, which led to the completion of this video is installing the amp wire, speaker, and the subwoofer behind the rear seat. Now, because I value every space in this cabin, I cannot put a subwoofer under the rear seats of the car. Now, there is some compromise because I'm squeezing an 8-inch subwoofer behind the seat. I can only expect so much. I'm running the amplifier under the seat, obviously, here. Just for basically, it's better for self-diagnostic if anything goes wrong, and it's basically closer to the front of the car than the back. So if anything goes wrong, I can actually just examine the amplifier instead of taking the whole seat back there out. So it was more convenience for me, and running wires is somewhat better. Running that 4-gauge wire, one, it's future-proof, just in case I do ever want to just go bigger on amplifying. Whatever. So 4-gauge was a pain in the ass running through the firewall. I ran through the firewall, not through the grommets. I drove through a dedicated hole in the firewall, grommet it, silicone around the grommet, just make sure it's weatherproof, weather sealed. Ground wire I hooked up to the latch right here. Remote wire to the head unit, and the speaker wire to the aftermarket head unit, which is over there. I have another video on it a few years back. That's where I am today, and I got a kicker for this setup. It says 1600 watts max for 1 ohm. I'm running a 4 ohm speaker at 300 RMS, so it's pretty much maxing out the speaker spec. I'm not expecting much. Again, I just want something more thumpy in the car. So this is where I installed the amplifier with an aluminum kick plate right there. So what I did was I have 2 identical plate right here material, and I basically tucked the other plate underneath the carpet, screw through, without screwing into the frame. So basically they're sandwiched again against each other with the carpet holding it in place, and it's pretty solid actually. It's not moving nowhere. I was happy that I figured that out instead of drilling into the frame of the body of the vehicle. So that's what I did, and this was actually an afterthought right here. So I basically fold this up just in case there's water or whatever splashing into the amplifier, which I didn't want. So, and it's a good kick plate to it, so there'll never be any damage to the amplifier. So, but yeah, I like it. It's clean, not bad. I wish I kind of painted it black though, but you can't really see it. Like, this is my position right here. That's my seating position right there, and you can't see it at all. So I like it. It's not too bad. And where I drilled into the firewall is right there. It's not an easy place to get to or drill, so I just didn't want to damage the grommet on the other location, like right, where is it? Where's my finger at? Like right there is an option right there. And there's one more up here somewhere. And I just didn't want to just puncture those grommets. It was just, I don't know. It wasn't for me. I did it that way. It took me a couple hours to do that. It wasn't easy at all. But yeah, so that's how I did my system. But yeah, that's a wrap, guys. Well, it's been quite a long road for this project, from front door speakers, rear door speakers. Wasn't happy after a 3-hour drive up to the Thousand Islands. And here we are, almost 30 hours later, and on to the third revision of the subwoofer box. And hopefully it fits behind the seat without it banging onto the back seat, which I'm pretty sure this time it won't. I'll show you the other two designs. So this is the first design right here. This is following a member's dimension on Ridgeline form. So the problem with this box is that it's too what is it? The depth is too big. So meaning the front and back is actually sitting right against the bracket. So it fits, seat goes on, but then when the bass hits too loud, the speaker basically comes out too far and hit the bracket. So that was the first design. The second design, I made it, I can only go, because my speaker is actually a shallow speaker, a sub. So I shaved off another 5/8 of an inch from front to back by going with a thinner back, 1/2 inch. Now my first design is all MDF. My second time around, I had some wood laying around, so I just went with the MDF in the front and 1/2 inch all around. And the side, as a bracing, I use MDF as well. So I'm hoping I can get away with 1/2 inch ply on the back and the sides, or top and bottom. But the sides, I use it to reinforce everything. So hopefully I can get away with plywood. So back to this. The second revision was I gave it some more space. It did sound tighter, I've noticed. It basically fits, and I can actually crank up the gain a lot more, but it did hit the bracket on certain songs, so even that couldn't help it. So I can probably get away with lowering the volume. That's just as a reference. The first box, my aftermarket radio with the Pioneer, and the gain set maybe a quarter way, I've that will hit at around 15 or 16 level volume. This, I can manage to get up to another 10 bars or 10 clicks, maybe around 26, 27, before it slightly hits the bracket. So that was the situation. And then I was annoyed. You know, building one of these boxes take around 4 or 5 hours, and then you gotta wait 24 hours before putting the subwoofer in. So it is time consuming, believe it or not. But here's a reference on how big this is, because like you can't tell exactly how big it is just because you don't know the size of it with. But here's my hand, and literally that's how much space you have to work with behind the back seat of a Ridgeline. Not much, dude. So, like, I think this is 4 3/8. Let me see if I'll tape measure. I think it's 4. Yeah, I think the amount of space you have behind is very little. And let me see if I can get the measurement. So it's 4. Hold on. So you're looking at, what is that? My focus. Yeah, 4 3/8. And then you got to factor in the subwoofer, which is going to be another 3/8 of an inch, and that's all you got. That's all you got. And because of the location of the bracket behind the seat, where the split is, that bracket is sitting right against the subwoofer at the frame, which is right here. So when this bass goes in and out on certain songs, it'll basically hit it. So on the second go, on the second box I built at 24, 25, 26 volume, this comes up extensively, and you can see the damage here on the woofer. It actually did quite a bit of a damage. So, but now I was like, forget it. Let's just, you can see right here that I actually had to reinforce it, because I had to route the plywood right here just to clear. Because I remember I did shave off 5/8 of an inch front and back. So when that happened, I actually had to shave off 1 ply of this. But to reinforce it, I added an extra ply behind it, glued it, staple it, just to reinforce it doesn't break or flex too much. So that's what I did there. Same thing with this box. Same design, same dimensions right here. And boom. Same concept. With that one, 5/8, I wrote quite a bit, almost half an inch inside the box, but because it's so dense, I still had half an inch back there. With this, I shave off a ply, looking at what, quarter, maybe, what's it? Not much though, but so yeah, so, but yeah, you can probably get away with that, but you definitely need a shallower subwoofer, because remember, I had to shave off 5/8 for that, to get to where I am now, where it fits, but still kind of it sucks. So with this design, the third revision, I said forget it. I'm not doing that behind the bracket. So from there, I moved over here. I shaved off 5 inches off the length of this. This from 11 inch down to 10. And here we are. So now, hopefully everything fits and it sounds good, because this, I think, is a bit larger than that box over there, even though I shaved off the length and the height by, you know, minimum dimensions. It should somewhat sound better and give it a lot more room to work with. I think with that dimension, I barely got away with the cubic space inside the box. I think the woofer requires 0.6, I think it was. And this was like a 0.54, I think it is. Barely made it, but it still sounds good. Very tight. That one sounds better. And this one a bit larger, I think, and hopefully, because I think the maximum size is 1.2 cubic feet, and hopefully this somewhat gives it enough space for it to maximize its potential, and you know, make it all worth it. Because again, this is 30 hours in. You can see the mess here, and I hate working with MDF. It's so dusty, and especially the particle is bad for you. And it's hard to get masked these days. So it was difficult. And annoying at the same time. Like, you spend 4 or 5 hours putting the box behind the seat. Hopefully, and another thing is that putting a damn seat on is terrible. It's, it requires 2-person, and at the time I just don't have a second hand around to help me. So taking it off is a pain. Another thing is that I bought those speaker terminals, and once they go in, they don't come out. And it was only like maybe half an hour apart. I used silicone. I think it's tore the thing apart. It's so flimsy. So my first box, I didn't have one. I just drilled a hole, put a damn wire through it, silicone it, and it worked just fine. I was afraid that air pressure might go through that hole, but it didn't happen. So second time around, I did the same thing. Put a wire through it. I'm just gonna connect it from here. My first time, I didn't splice it like this. It was from the amp right to the car. But this time, I just didn't have the patience to take the front seat apart, wire it, and then rewire it back into the car. I didn't have time for that this time. This time I was more of impatient. So here we are. But this is just an update for you guys. I've been updating on the posts on my trial and error, and boy, I hope this video helps somebody out at least, if you do want to go through this. But one thing I do have to say is that this 8-inch subwoofer does put a punch in the Ridgeline. If it's day and night, I love it. It feels good. I mean, I've had bigger subs back in the day in my older sedans, 10, 12s, and this 8-inch, surprisingly, yeah, it might not vibrate your seat, but it does hit, and I want it in the truck, Otherwise, I wouldn't go through this hassle, because it's a night and day feeling listening to songs and music and whatnot. So, but yeah, let me go and put this in the truck and crank the volume up. Give it up to 6 o'clock in the morning. I'm not trying to wake the neighbors up. But yeah, this hopefully this works, because if not, I'll be real pissed. But luckily, thankfully, I already thought of a plan B. If anything, if it's too large, I'm just gonna chop that end off right there, cap it off on a piece of block or whatever, So, but yeah, I just can't imagine this failing, because there's no bracket on this side of the seat. This is close to the gas tank right here. I just can't imagine this box failing on me. Like that one, I couldn't really go forward with it. I couldn't really do anything with this box going, meaning that I can't really like take this off and flip it or whatever. This one is more straightforward. But yeah, you can see this design, it gives it a lot more space in the box. Personally, if you can find a shallower subwoofer or a woofer, I think they're called woofer if they're not in the box. I'm not too sure, but yeah, if you can't find a shallower subwoofer, if you can, this design might work for you. You just gotta knock it off. Maybe if you can shave off another like 3/8 of an inch, you can probably stick with this design in the same location as the stock box subwoofer. But if you can't, you gotta put it against the gas tank behind the driver's side.